Well, U.S. lawmakers are back in Washington today after a week-long recess. They're under intense pressure to act on gun control after the deadly school shooting in Florida earlier this month. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump hosted several dozen state governors today at the White House, and he addressed the shooting. The CBC's Lindsay Duncombe is in Washington, and she joins me now live. So, Lindsay, what did Trump have to say to those governors?
Well, Donald Trump said pretty much what he has said in the last week since the shooting became so much discussion about gun control. He repeated that he believes that the way to keep schools safe is by hardening those schools. That's kind of a new term that's been developed that essentially means give teachers guns, something that the president and the NRA say is the way to ensure that a shooter would be shot quickly or not go into a school at all, using that idea of armed teachers as a deterrent. Donald Trump also criticized the armed security guard who did not go in at the time of the shooting in Florida, and bizarrely said that he, Donald Trump, would have run in even though it was not, even if he didn't have a weapon. Here's what that sounded like.
The way they performed was frankly disgusting. They were listening to what was going on. The one in particular, he was early. Then you had three others that probably a similar deal a little bit later, but a similar kind of a thing. You know, I really believe, you don't know until you test it, but I really believe I'd run in there even if I didn't have a weapon. And I think most of the people in this room would have done that too, because I know most of you.
I was just looking on Twitter, and one commentator said that that is the most strange thing the president has said since his "I'm a stable genius" tweet a couple of months ago, Arthi. All of this discussion is happening as a new poll shows that Donald Trump's popularity is sinking again, down 5 points this month in one poll to 35%. And that polling was done over the time when Trump's response to gun control was in the news. Just 1/3 of Americans surveyed said they supported the president's policies on gun control.
And we know that certainly when Donald Trump raised the idea or the suggestion of arming teachers, there was a lot of reaction from the public. Now, when he's had this meeting with several dozen governors, how did they respond to Trump?
It was interesting to watch the different governors with the television cameras on them talk to the president. I think a lot of people know the way to deal with Donald Trump is to praise him, and there was some of that, although the language was careful. Certainly not from the governor from Washington. He called the president out on that policy. Here's what he had to say.
Now, I know that you have suggested arming our teachers. And
not your teachers.
Not your,
arming a small portion that are very gun adept.
Now, I just think this is a circumstance where we need to listen, that educators should educate, and they should not be foisted upon this responsibility of packing heat in first-grade classes. Now, I understand you have suggested this, and we suggest things, and sometimes then we listen to people about it. Maybe they don't look so good a little later. So I just suggest we need a little less tweeting here, a little more listening.
And what's really interesting is, you know, while the news has been dominated by this assertion that teachers should be armed and the visceral reaction that that causes in many people, including teachers, in many ways it's a distraction from what the real legislative possibilities could be. And the reality is that the lawmakers have come back to Capitol Hill without any proposed legislation. States are making some changes, but at the federal level, this is a very difficult task. It hasn't been able to be done shooting after shooting after shooting to this point. And aside from all the intensity of the debate, there doesn't appear to be any brand new policies headed forward.
All right, thanks for this, Lindsay. That is the CBC's Lindsay Duncombe in Washington.